Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for your attention while this important legal information is reviewed. What you hear should not replace consultation with an attorney and should not be considered advice for your situation. On behalf of the Pilot Lawyer and your entire crew, it's our pleasure to have you aboard.
Welcome, aviators, to the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. With us, the Eisen brothers at the Eisen Law Firm, where aviation law is all we do, nothing else. You're here for what we do best, navigating the FAA medical certification process for pilots and those who want to become pilots. And of course, if you don't laugh, you cry. And for the next 30 minutes, we hope to bring you the lighter side of what can otherwise be a frustrating process. So whether you're laughing at us or with us, join us, brothers, as we discuss the fascinating world of FAA medical certification. Today, I have with you here people that you've grown accustomed to, love dearly, and wish you never heard from again in your entire life.
You know what? That's it. I'm filing a complaint against the lack of energy that you put into the reading of that opening. I thought it was just truly atrocious.
It's funny you should speak of filing complaints, because today we're going to discuss FAA medical certification hotline complaints. Give me one. Hey, you know, that brings to mind, we also have Christopher here.
Oh. Sound effect Larry.
So now that we've introduced these two miserable wastes of time, Christopher and Alex, see, that's the kind of repartee you can expect from a hotline complaint. Oh, this person over here is a worthless oaf, and I wish that they would do their share of the work and wouldn't take half of the monies. Or, oh, I wish this guy could do more than just offer some brand of notoriety to the fact that we're doing medical certification stuff and he's a doctor. No, instead,
I got to do all the work around.
So that's the idea with a hotline complaint. People just making up stuff, you know? So my thinking here is that you really got to be aware of who you know, who you don't know, and who you care about, who you don't care about.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another successful podcast for the Eisen Law Firm.
All right.
I would say this, more importantly, and I think this goes, and this is legal advice I think you can apply across the board, even though we only do aviation law.
You can take it to task.
You can take it to town. You should really mind your P's and Q's out there. Don't let everyone know every single intimate detail about yourself, because you never know who's going to go out and say something and start some drama and make your life miserable. And especially so if you hold medical certification with the FAA and maybe you haven't dotted your I's and crossed your T's when it comes to filling out your medical application, and you have some skeletons in the closet, and lo and behold, you let those skeletons out of the closet for a moment, and now they're being brought to the attention of the FAA.
Well, you know who you really have to watch out for?
Tree hugger Joe.
Your loved ones.
Trust no one.
Yeah. I can't even believe I'm talking to you guys.
If my lips could sing.
Your lips to God's ears. So what is a hotline complaint?
So essentially you, run afoul of somebody's other personality. And they go to the FAA and say, hey, look, I know John Doe over here has got a raging case of substance dependence. He hasn't told you guys about it. Or you don't even have to get that far, really. But
Oh, no, it's not.
just, hey, this guy's got an alcohol problem. Boom. Yep, that's it. You don't even have to allege that the person's had like a history of DUI. Not that we're telling people to go out there and start doing hotline complaints, trying to drum up business. But essentially, it can be something as innocuous as just an allegation without any kind of basis in fact. And that's enough to get the hairs on end.
Hey, I flew with John Doe last week. He seemed kind of ADD. He couldn't really focus while I was
Hotline
flying.
complaint. Please bring a hotline complaint. So the idea here is that the FAA has a hotline where essentially anybody that's interested in the safety of the national airspace system, which seemingly is anybody, can log on to the FAA's website if they have access to so much as a library computer, and identify that, hey, listen, X, Y, and Z pilot has X, Y, and Z issue.
I just asked someone for their cell phone for a second.
Hey,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any difference because I don't
Take it
know
right
that-
out of their
I don't know
hands.
that there's any there's no tracking. So the reason I said the library computers because anybody has access to it. You dope.
Anybody can do anything.
Anybody.
No, that's honestly the pretty much the long and short of it.
Well, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and these people feel like they can do anything on a hotline complaint. So that being said, what we're looking at here is that the FAA, their famous line is, "Oh, well, Congress has charged us that in the event we receive a hotline complaint, we are entitled to follow up on it, and we are rightful to do so." Which, sure, I mean, maybe there are some hotline complaints that are picking up on subtle issues such as substance dependence and so on. But we also see a lot of vindictive actions being done by ex-spouses and ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends.
How about fiancés? You want to throw fiancés? in there?
There's never been a fiance that's made a hotline complaint.
Never
Ever?
once. Have you
Never.
seen a vindictive?
Now, I'll also say there's never been an old grumpy person at an airport that didn't like the other old grumpy person. They don't do hotline
Or a
complaints.
neighbor who just doesn't like the pitter patter of your Cessna 172 flying lazy eights over your neighborhood.
That's correct.
At low
And
altitude.
we've also never seen a flight school doing one on a student. We've never seen that before.
No.
So
It's-
now let me ask you.
It's hard to imagine how anybody could ever have a hotline complaint lodged against
It's just virtually impossible. But let me go back and run over some of the credentials.
joking.
Some of the credentials necessary to file a hotline complaint. You have to have
a heartbeat.
you have to have
pulse.
NSA credentials, and yeah, so anybody can do one, and that's the problem, and that's the number one complaint that we'll hear from a client, which is say, well, what do you mean just anybody can go in there and say anything they want, and the FAA is going to follow up on it?
That's ironic. A complaint against a
Now
complaint
I'm
line.
beginning to have concerns for their cognitive abilities. They don't understand something that simple. Anybody. So I think we beat that pretty much to death. Okay.
So what happens after I get a hotline complaint? What do they do to me?
Typically,
Well,
we'll see cases where a hotline complaint is handled by the regional flight surgeon's office. So you'll get a letter from your regional flight surgeon sort of saying, hey, listen, we've received information from a hotline complaint that you use cocaine on a daily basis and you drink alcohol more than you should, something along those lines. And so then they'll say, we need more information as to your eligibility to hold a medical certificate. Typically, they'll ask for a personal statement from you, trying to ascertain whether or not you really do cocaine every night and drink more alcohol than you should. They'll ask sometimes for a psychiatric evaluation. Unfortunately and fortunately, there is some discretion amongst the regional flight surgeon's office, depending on which regional flight surgeon's office is handling the case, as to what is going to be asked for.
So when you say regional flight surgeon's office, how does a hotline complaint get routed to a regional flight surgeon's office? And what is a regional flight surgeon's office?
You're asking for deliberative process privileged information that I couldn't even possibly answer.
So what use
Why
are
did
you?
Alex just get up and walk away?
He's just clearly outside of his scope of employment.
Anyhow,
He's gotta hydrate.
So,
I think the good listeners would appreciate that and just hack up a lung into the microphone in their.
I could have hit the
car
pause
stereos.
button.
Well, nobody told me we
well,
had
that
a pause
being
button.
said, there are 9 regional flight surgeons scattered amongst the country. Your country is slivered up into 9 divisions. 9 of them.
Until
That seems
20
like an
seconds ago,
odd
I thought there
number.
were 3.
So that being said, depending on who your regional flight surgeon is, you're going to have some variety in what might be asked of you. Typically, you're going to be looking at least a personal statement. Sometimes if pills are alleged, like you're taking some medication that you shouldn't be according to the hotline complainer, the regional flight surgeon will ask for a history of your prescription records.
Pound sand. I'm not
No,
giving them that.
Well,
What happens if I don't?
well, you could end up in a situation where you get a failure to provide revocation or failure to provide denial. How would you like that?
Well, that sounds
Pound
better.
that sand.
That sounds better than the FAA knowing my business.
Well, you should have told them to begin with.
Well, what happens if you respond to this?
Well, that's a good question.
Wait, well, before you, let me ask you this.
Oh, please,
Oh,
please.
yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
for this to be a discussion rather
Yeah.
than a
Soliloquy?
a circle
What
backing.
happens when you get the hotline complaint? How do you receive it?
In
and
the mail.
Okay, so you get it in
How
the
do you
mail.
get anything?
Certified mail.
And in that letter, will it include the pilot bill of rights?
Oh, yeah, baby.
What is the pilot bill of rights? Because I had somebody I was talking to the other day. They weren't quite sure about that, and I wasn't sure how to explain it to them.
Well, the pilot bill of rights.
On the job training right here.
I come back and listen to these later, so I know what to do.
Pilot bill of rights is self-explanatory. It is the bill of rights for pilots, which essentially
I like to liken it to the Miranda rights.
Sure.
You have the right to remain
idea is that
silent.
you don't have to say anything, but at the same time, you don't have to hold a medical certificate. So if you don't provide a response, we're just going to revoke your medical for failure to provide.
They really
They have you coming and going.
Somebody sat down and they put pen to paper, and they also brought in a pencil too. They didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And they thought, how can we make it look like we're going to give these guys something and just take it away at the same time?
Guys and gals. So let me
Those are
back
some
up here.
shrewd
So you're going to get
lawyers.
a letter. You're going to get a letter with a hotline complaint.
I bet it was doctors. I don't even bet it. I bet it. That sounds like
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Doctors, lawyers, lions and tigers and bears. Who
Dentists.
cares? Dentists. Yep, the dentists.
Okay. Anyhow, so the pilot bill of rights gives you the option to not
don't have to respond.
But if
But
you
the
don't
pilot bill of
respond,
rights, because it's its own discussion. It gives you other benefits. You know, if you go into the NTSB, it's essentially provided federal rules of civil procedure, federal rules of evidence, and those proceedings and so on.
yeah, that's a
So
big help.
but it's all a joke. It's all a farce. That being said, you're gonna get a letter. It's gonna say, "Hey, listen, we got wind that you're doing coke every night and you're using
Back to that old song again.
you're doing coke every night and taking an Ambien chaser with it, right?" And so, I mean, there's fantastical things you'll see in these hotline complaints. It's oh well, we hear that you fly transatlantic flights, while you're hiring a kite and you're
Cross-dressing.
cross-dressing and you're doing all these crazy things and
I mean, we've seen
these
stuff
types of
like
things.
that, though, where
so there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
There's problems that people just make up anything and then they'll just put that into the letter. Anyhow, then they'll say, well, we want a personal statement, or we want a letter from your doctor saying that you're not really having substance use problems. Maybe they'll want a psychiatric evaluation. They'll want something to assess whether or not you're still eligible to hold a medical certificate in light of your cocaine use or whatever it is that's been reported. Sometimes in the drug and alcohol cases, they'll ask for you to take a drug test within 48 hours of signing for the certified mail receipt of the hotline complaint. So if you
Is that a
don't,
hard and fast 48.
that's typically a hard and fast.
What if I'm outside the 48?
Well, you should still go do the drug test, and you better not fail it either.
Well, what if I'm on vacation?
Well, what
I'm
if, okay, let's play this one out. You're on vacation in probably the most boring place on earth. Let's just say, now, please excuse me, anybody that lives in frost-proof Florida.
Hey,
blessings.
Middle Kansas seemed pretty dull.
Some lovely people. Anyhow,
They are lovely people, but it's a dull place.
You went through there at about midnight in a blizzard. There's not much more dull you can get.
suffice to
Anyhow, so
say,
let's say
you're going on one of your exciting vacations, and
Hawaii.
Continue.
so anyhow, you're on a vacation, and somebody at home, which let's just say Mamu,
Let's say
signs for.
Hey,
Mamu signs for a letter for you, and it's me.
you're on vacation and your wife signs for the letter.
So someone signs for it, it still counts. The FAA doesn't care if Mamu signed for it, if your wife.
What if no one signs for it? What if
If
it-
no,
what if you
I've
just don't-
seen that before.
Yeah.
I think there's some option where USPS allows you to pre-sign for certified letters. You heard of that?
Yeah, it's just the big government trying to.
It's the
Shake you
government.
down.
Government shaking the government. So anyhow, that doesn't make any difference. If you have 48 hours to take the test from time ink has dried on that certified mail card.
Has your FAA medical certificate been denied? Are you concerned you may not be able to get a medical certificate from the FAA? Are you at risk for FAA action for failing to report your medical history appropriately? Call the pilot lawyer at 1-855-FAA-1215 to discuss your options for getting the FAA to issue your medical certificate and get you flying. We are happy to evaluate your case and discuss with you a plan for presenting your case to the AME or the FAA. Aviation law is all we do, nothing else.
Now, you can we've certainly had cases where people have been, out of the town or whatever, and they haven't gotten the letter in time. And so you use ways to kind of work around that. And those are kind of case by case. I'm not going to provide any blanket advice on those cases, but just know that if you miss it or if you fail it, then you're in the world of situation where they're potentially going to say, well, at a minimum, now you meet criteria for substance abuse because you've either failed or refused this drug test. So there's that.
That's rough.
Now, the number one question that we get is, can I find out who made the complaint so I can sue the ever-loving snot out?
Who made this anonymous complaint?
99.9% of the time, I would say, and that's a statistic I've just made up, it is anonymous. That you really, the FAA doesn't know. It used to be something where you could make a phone call. And I think it's still possible to make a phone call. And, it used to be like a hotline complaint number, as I recall. But now it is a web form. You can also mail in. So I can just see the hotline complaints mailed in from like magazine cutout.
Yeah,
letters.
I was gonna say that's totally how it's about my complaint.
Yeah,
Hey, you know what? I think what you're trying to tell me, though, is if I want to know who submitted the complaint, look in the bed of which you sleep.
Why you got to take it there?
Well, I'm just saying.
The bed in which I sleep.
I mean,
the bed bugs
there
don't know how to
are.
write up letters.
I would
They're
say.
okay.
I would say though that the aviation community, of course, all hobbyists of any persuasion, there always seems to be those that are fairly sure of themselves.
The one.
There's always the one that knows more than the next guy and the guy next to that guy.
Even if he's wrong, he knows more.
There's just no doubt about it. And I think those individuals might at times probably be more likely to run afoul of making someone's feelings hurt. And now you got a hotline complaint, right or wrong.
That's correct.
But what if it isn't wrong? What if it is like, let's just say it's completely made up. It's all vindictive, that you've never had a history of.
You know what? I see that almost most of the time. Seems like most of these hotline complaints are closed out with, well, that was wrong.
Yeah, but how do you prove a negative?
Well, that's the thing. That's where you might want to get a aviation attorney involved. So you have to sort of walk back and say, well, hey, listen, you don't have any proof of this. What proof do you have that this person has got bipolar disorder and is also a, now I got to go spend all this money on evaluations to prove something that never existed in the first place. Yeah. So, I mean, this to some extent becomes a legal piece.
What about
from an evidentiary standpoint?
Where somebody is alleged to have, and not to keep going back to the wellspring here of substance dependence, but
it's the easiest one because it's I saw him doing lines of coke off of,
or not even that have to go that
whatever,
far. Just
off the propeller
alcohol.
before we took off.
It's the best place to do
off
it.
the yoke.
Yeah, I want to get high and high. No, but
Please,
like with alcohol, right? And so somebody says, "Oh, this guy has a history of drinking too much," right? And so it's now they're asking for a personal statement about your alcohol usage. Whereas before, the FAA was fat, dumb, and happy as far as you having a medical and no concerns about what you were drinking on your spare time. But now you got to respond to them, and you do so without the careful guidance of the attorneys at the Alliston Law Firm. And now, and you're a truthful, honest kind of guy. You put pen to paper, and you tell them what they want to know. Send it off to them, and now guess what? You just opened up a can of worms because you told them, yeah, I like to, kick it on the weekends, and I'll have 5, 6, 7 beers in a sitting, while
shouldn't they tell the truth?
Well, yeah, they should tell the truth, but it should be based on reality. It's not like 5, 6, 7. Well, what is it?
Well, shouldn't the
five?
FAA know that you
7?
drink 5, 6, 7 beers? I mean, aren't they?
That's not what the question asks on the application. The question isn't, do you drink alcohol? The question is, do you have a history of alcohol or substance or alcohol abuse or dependence?
Yeah.
Which isn't how many beers
So
do you drink?
you're essentially saying here that, albeit the airman should tell the truth, but why should the truth come out when it wouldn't have otherwise been
required?
So you're saying every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there, or Harriet, could be drinking, 15, 20 beers a weekend, but we don't know anything about their patterns of use. But just because this person was inclined to be reported to the FAA,
Now
they're going to come under scrutiny, whereas they wouldn't have had anything under the medical application or the medical procedures that would have warranted them to have this scrutiny.
Right. And so you can really, I think, find yourself in a world of hurt real quick when you respond. If you don't do so, either with guidance as to what's in your best interest, right? Whatever that may be under the situation. And also, too, if you have counsel, whether it's us or somebody else, then when you have that counsel, they provide a layer of buffer layer, essentially, so that you don't have that one-on-one direct relationship with the FAA, so that everything you say to them isn't potentially being used against you. You have your advocate or your counselor can literally say the same thing in a lot of instances, and it not have that admission effect that we see, again, thanks to the Pilot Bill of Rights under the
I understand the
federal
argument.
rules of evidence.
Do you ever see hotline complaints in marital disputes?
You really,
those types of things?
really keep harping on that.
We see that quite a bit. I'll see that all the time.
I don't handle any of that stuff.
We know. So essentially, it's a situation where we'll see like divorces or bad breakups, or even like business breakups. Probably when this business breaks up, I will plan to hotline complaint you.
That's fine. Go ahead. I'm an open book. Which is not what you should be out there, listeners. Unless you're specifically asked and you tell the truth.
Always tell the truth. I mean, come on. Isn't that beautiful? I think we can rest
I think over the course of these podcasts, I think we've made it clear honesty is the best policy, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's within the boundaries and the letter of the law.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh.
That no one's overstepping.
How much time we got left on
Where's
this?
the cheer? Where's the cheer?
The cheer, the applause.
Clapping. Yeah, the applause. Come on.
Whatever.
So anyhow, how else can a
form.
hotline complaint screw you up every way to Sunday?
So we've been talking a lot about the medical certification side, because that's primarily what we focus on. But there's operational violations that could kind of get you a hotline complaint, like you were flying too low.
You certainly can.
You're flying too low, or somebody
Like Icarus, flying too close to the sun.
Cause a runway incursion, and the guy that you almost ran into, submits a hotline complaint. Yeah, that guy over there in 5328 Zulu. That's the plane we used to rent.
Yeah. So you could, it could be about aircraft noise. We've seen hotline complaints about chemtrails, drone operation.
Oh man, the drones.
Laser incidents, lighting outages or obstruction markings, low flying aircraft, military aircraft operations, among other medical certification issues, but primarily medical certification.
Wouldn't you hate to be an airline pilot and somebody, that pilot flew me through too much turbulence? I can see that being a thing.
The biggest issue, though, I think the biggest concern people should have, though, we've really buried the lead on this one. If you get a hotline complaint and you were under an obligation to report whatever it is that's being complained of on your medical application, but you failed to do so, but now you got this hotline complaint, are you cruising for a bruising?
Well, if you've reported it on the FAA medical application.
Well, if you were paying attention and listening to the prompts,
I wasn't listening.
Clearly you weren't. You didn't report it.
Oh, well,
you were under an obligation to report it, but you didn't report it.
Yeah, I understand.
You were going along fat, dumb, and happy.
I understand. What's inclined to happen there is that you end up in a spot where the hotline complainer knows most of the time that you haven't reported it to the FAA. And then as a result of...
Because you were running your mouth.
You were running your mouth now. To the wrong people. Should have been running to the FAA. You end up in a spot where now it's hard to fix it because the FAA's had to find out about it, whatever it is, from somebody else. Now they have the opportunity to potentially do an action or for falsification. There's certain ways to maneuver around that, though. But
so I'll play it out here for you.
Do that so fast, I'll have the cops here.
Well,
wait, no, I should have said you do that. No, I should have said you do that. And I'll have the cops here so fast.
Nobody cares.
But instead, I said So you do that so fast. God.
Anyhow,
Go ahead.
To play it out.
This one's playing out pretty weak.
Yeah. So to play it out there, you failed to put down something you were required to report on your application. You get a hotline complaint alleging that issue. Now the FAA comes with a letter requesting that you provide certain information related to that issue. And you have two options, at least. There may be a third option, but at the initial outset, the option is, well, I provide that information to them as they're requesting. And now I've just proven falsification of my past application by providing them with the documents that showed that I had it at the time of my past application and I didn't put it down. And that ostensibly you had knowledge that you had it at the time of that application. Or two, I don't provide them with the information and bada bing, now I'm getting revoked for failure to provide or denial for failure to provide. So you're kind of between a rock and a hard place, aren't you?
That's absolutely right.
But there may be a third option. And if you want to know what the third option is, you're going to have to call us.
Yeah, we can't give away
I'm not giving away that one.
Can't give that secret away.
Yeah. That's good showmanship right there.
That's right.
Hey, what's that I see?
I think that's us coming in from base to final.
Thank God.
Please, God.
It's been a rocky flight.
This has been a weird one.
Assume crash positions.
Well, you've logged another uneventful half hour listening to the Pilot Lawyer podcast. And even though we still have been unable to make an airplane properly weight and balance with the three of us in the aircraft, we are the Eisen brothers at the Eisen Law Firm. We'll see you next time. And if you get a hotline complaint, you better get us on the phone quick because you have a problem.
For the love of all that's holy.
Or somebody else. I mean, it doesn't have to be
Equally
all about
qualified.
us. Doesn't have to be all
But it should be
There's
us.
none others.
All right, goodbye.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.